We're back with another episode of Axiom After Work. I'm your host, Crystal Floyd, and today I'm super excited to be joined by Matt Certain. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, Matt, tell me a little bit about yourself. How long have you been at Axiom, and what do you do here?
I've worked at Axiom for 18 years. I'm a senior technical support manager, and everything that comes along with that. There's a lot of work between teams, and between our group and corporate as a whole, and yeah, lots of things there.
Awesome. Always glad to have you here. So let's talk Star Wars.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about Star Wars for those of us who may or may not be familiar with it.
So if you haven't been living under a rock, you will know what Star Wars is. You may. It's okay. There are 9 main movies and several offshoot movies as well. The first 3 coming out, 70s, 80s. And then the prequels that came out, late 1990s. And then, the sequels that just recently came out a few years back. Just lots of space drama using the Force. You got Darth Vader and stormtroopers and all that.
Stormtroopers. Speaking of stormtroopers, I hear that you are very passionate about Star Wars and this particular character, Stormtrooper.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit how you got involved with that.
There's an organization, nationwide organization, actually global organization called the 501st. When I originally heard about it, I thought it was like an Arkansas thing, got 501, like that's the area code, but it's not. It was made by some guys in California out in 97, I think, and it's now over 10,000 members across 60 different countries. So it's a very large organization. And what they do is they have very accurate costumes that come from the movies. They have very high levels of standards around those costumes. And one of the first ones they encourage you to make is a stormtrooper or a TK. Because they can always it's one of those things that a stormtrooper is one of those that most people see it and they immediately recognize it, And so it's very iconic. And so that's one of the reasons why I went with that one.
So with this organization, 501st Legion, what types of events do they host or attend?
Okay, so the 501st is 3 main types of events. The first one is charity. Okay. So if there's a charity run or some sort of event or ball or gala, we will attend to help bring people into that. We have an event coming up with Children's Hospital, which we're working with a few other organizations with Make-A-Wish Foundation, and we'll go in and give out gifts to kids at Children's Hospital, all dressed in armor and everything. And the kids have a blast. The doctors and nurses all come out, so it's a whole lot of fun. But so that's the charity aspect, is really kind of helping bring focus to other people's charities. The motto of the organization is "Bad guys doing good." So while everybody in the 501st is a villain, we're all out there trying to do good for the community. The other events that we do, one is, so you got the charity community events. So if there's a parades or some sort of like a river fest or something like that, a lot of times the 501st will show up if they're invited and they want them to attend. They'll come out there and do that. And then also just awareness about the organization. So we'll be at cosplays and Comic-Cons and things like that all around the nation.
So let's talk about stormtroopers and your interest in that. How did you first become a stormtrooper?
So went out to, I met some of the guys at the 501st, and they gave some recommendations. And they have a list of all the different armors and bad guys that you can create a costume for. And the one that they recommend to do is the Stormtrooper, because there's a ton of them, and you need a lot when you're doing troops and things. They like to have 100 of them marching together sometimes if they can. But so I went out there. I learned a lot about it from their website. They give you a lot of good information on how to build and who to buy from. This particular helmet and my armor is a direct imprint from one of the ones made in A New Hope. So the original movie, this is an impression of that. You can actually see the thumbprints of the original people making it long ago. It's kind of lumpy, but that's because it's actual to the movie. And so they have very strict requirements about things like the types of screws used, how far apart different things are, like how far the brow is, and the way things are painted. Once you complete your armor, it's inspected, and you have people come out. They'll give you an initial inspection that lets you in, and then you can go for additional levels of authenticity. The highest level is Centurion status, and mine is at Expert Infantry, which is one below it. I've got a few things I got to do to get to Centurion, but yeah, that's the helmet from the whole armor.
So you talked about the 501st Legion and the different types of events that they do. What's your favorite type of event to attend?
I really like, there's two. One is anytime I get to go to children's, that's the one I like, right? Because it really, to see the kids light up and the nurses and the doctors, I mean, that's a tough place to be.
Right.
And so get to be there and do that. You can cry in your helmet and nobody's going to see it, so that's fine. So it's really nice to be able to go there and bring light to a really tough time for a lot of these people. And so that's what we like to do. That one's a good one. I also like the parades. That's fun because you don't have to walk around. You just get in the back of a truck or a float and wave to people. Those are a lot of fun too.
So you have to tell me your favorite memory.
I think going to Return of the Jedi and like of Star Wars. I think that's the one. But of the 501st is really going into children's the last few times. Just we were the first group that they allowed in after the pandemic. And so we had to go and make sure we're vaccinated and everything and had to follow lots of procedures. But because it was such a strong organization, they were able to, let us in. So we're the first ones to be able to, and that was a big deal because those kids had been, locked up.
And I'm almost certain that the parents enjoyed,
Yes. I mean, we had just as many pictures with parents and nurses and doctors as we do with kids. So, it was always a blast.
It's a great time that you're making a difference. And I know you spoke about the community aspect of the 501st Legion. So why is that so important to you?
I just, really getting people to just have a good time and just enjoy it. It's all, you can always see a smile on people's faces when they see you. It's just, kind of bringing some joy and, during tough times, especially with children's.
If one wanted to get involved with the 501st Legion, how would they go about doing that?
So the first thing is you go 501st.com.
Okay.
And then they have different costuming. They have the costume reference library, the CRL. You click on that, and you can see all the different types of costumes that you can build out there. And that's a good way to start, and then look through and figure out what you want. The local group here in Arkansas is the Diamond Garrison, because Arkansas State Diamond and all that. So the Diamond Garrison is all across Arkansas, but each state has their own garrison, sometimes more or less. But you can see, if you go out on the website, you can see per region, who's your local detachment officer and their webpage, and then you can actually meet up with the local members.
It's great. This has been interesting. Like, I've learned a lot about the 501st Legion and stormtroopers and everything. So thank you for the impact that you're making, with children in the hospital and in the community. We definitely appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks again for joining us for another episode of Axiom After Work. May the force be with you.